Samsung has decided to unveil its flagship models earlier this year. So we find the S21 Ultra, their most high-end flagship, the S21 Plus and the S21. So today we will focus on the last one, which is also the smallest and the cheapest one. After a month of use and a couple of updates, here is what I think. Should you consider buying it, or is it better to look at the competition? Answer in this video. Let's talk about the design. The front panel does not change that much. We find a 6.2 inches screen with a punch hole in the center. You will notice that the screen isn't curved anymore. It is totally flat. The biggest change is in the rear side. Samsung continues what they did with the Note 20, and the back is now made of plastic. Note that the S21 Plus has a glass back. But is it a bad thing? I don't think so. The plastic used is of good quality and allows the phone to maintain a reasonable weight. And most importantly, it doesn't catch fingerprints like crazy. The frame, made of brilliant aluminum, is very sensitive to fingerprints. I would have liked to return to a matte frame, as it was the case with the S9 series. At the bottom, we find, from the right to the left, a grid for the speakers, a USB Type-C port, a microphone, and a compartment for the SIM card. Unfortunately, we cannot put microSD card anymore. So think twice before choosing your storage option. Finally, we find two microphones on the upper frame. Note that the camera is slightly protruding, so the phone can be wobbly when laid flat. But this won't be a problem anymore as soon as I put a case on the phone. Now, let's take a closer look at the front panel, and more precisely, the screen. We find, as I said, a very discreet punch hole which will be quickly forgotten. The lower part has a very thin chin, but still very slightly thicker compared to the upper edge. On this model, Samsung continues to use its dynamic AMOLED panel. The display is bright, the colors are rich, the contrast is infinite thanks to the OLED technology, and the screen is also HDR compatible. All these elements made the S21 an excellent device for media consumption. The screen this year is only Full HD, but coming from an S9 with its Quad HD screen, I find that the difference is very minimal. Outside, the screen is bright enough to look at the content comfortably, even in direct sunlight. The screen is still 120Hz to make things super smooth, but now has a variable refresh rate, in order to preserve the battery. You can of course switch to 60Hz if you want to save even more. Finally, the screen has a fingerprint reader, which is pretty fast. Once unlocked, we access to the home interface of Samsung One UI 3.1. It does not represent a major change compared to the previous iterations, but we can welcome the introduction of the Google Feed. But if you want, and I insist if you really want, you can switch back to Samsung Feed. Otherwise, it's still the Samsung interface with a little cartoony icons and an access to a rather efficient dark mode. This mode is also active in the Samsung web browser, which, by the way, supports an ad blocker. I'm not going to present you all the features, otherwise the video would last 3 hours. I will rather talk about some interesting aspects, like the fact that the interface had modes focused on health and productivity, which allows you to limit the number of applications you can use while working. The fact that you can change the navigation buttons, switching from a gesture navigation to a more conventional one. I would also like to remind you that there is an app called One Hand Operation Plus, which allows you to disable a slice of the phone, so you can access to the slide panel without triggering a return. It also allows you to launch shortcuts like making screenshots by dragging and holding the screen. Speaking of screenshots, this interface also allows you to take some super long screenshots, which can be very useful. This phone has also an object remover hidden in the gallery, which works quite well on a simple background. But I will not recommend using it on a more complex subject, as it gives some strange results. This phone also offers DeX, which allows you to use your phone as a computer, offering a Windows-like interface, more optimized for multitasking. And lastly, One UI also offers a theme manager, if you want to change the appearance of the interface. And if you want more, we are on Android, so you have quite the choice in terms of launcher, like Nova Launcher, Launcher, or Go Launcher if you live in timeline where the coronavirus still doesn't exist, and also in Icon Pack. The phone is powered by the Snapdragon 888, 8GB RAM, and UFS 3.1 fast storage. Some regions will have the Exynos 2100. With such a configuration, we should expect some excellent performance. And it is indeed the case. During these months of use, no slowdown was felt. Applications open without stuttering, switching from one to another as well, and those are well kept in memory. All this, coupled with a 120Hz screen and a nicely optimized software, guarantees a super smooth experience. For gamers, the Adreno 660 does very well in games and has no problem running heavy titles like Honkai Impact 3, and will not be affected by light games like Dokkan Battle. But I would like to mention that Genshin Impact, which is one of the most demanding games of the Play Store, isn't perfectly smooth and sometimes suffers from slowdowns. It may be an optimization problem, as it may result from a bad heating management from Samsung. Now let's focus to the cameras. The setup does not change that much compared to the last year model. We always find 3 lenses, a main module of 12 megapixels, a module of 64 megapixels used to simulate a 3x zoom, and an ultra-wide-angle lens of 12 megapixels. Sorry, no macro lens, no monochrome sensors, so do not be too disappointed. I am not going to present you the camera interface, it does not evolve that much compared to the S20, but we can salute the introduction of a feature called Zoom Lock, which allows you to lock the viewfinder when zooming at 20x or 30x. Photos were taken with the scene optimizer off in 12 megapixel mode. As you'd expect from a 2021 flagship, daytime photos looks great. Details are plentiful and the dynamic range is excellent, both outdoors and under artificial lighting. Note that the phone tends to process photos to make them kind of Instagram ready. This means that pictures are often a little more vibrant and brighter compared to the reality. This setup offers a great versatility and allows you to capture some very different pictures from the same place. I am pleasantly surprised by the level of homogeneity of colors and exposure between the different sensors. As for the zoom, it is very good at 3x and usable up to 10x. Beyond that, it will be used mainly to decipher a distant element such as a panel, for example. The rendering in portrait mode is convincing, with a good exposure and a good subject separation. You can use the main module or the zoom lens to limit the distortion. But sometimes it happens that the subject separation is not perfect, like here with this statue. In video, the phone can shoot in 4K 60fps with a very good fluidity, an excellent dynamic range, and a stability that make it a very good device for vlogging. There is a very little slight over-sharpening, but nothing too dramatic here. The phone can also shoot in this definition with the ultra-wide lenses, and as you can see, the footage is super stable with an excellent exposure management. If you want more stability, the super steady mode is always available to have super stable footages even in full movement, but note that the definition will be limited to Full HD. This phone also introduced the direct-to-view mode, which allows you to film simultaneously with all the lenses, in order to switch it when you want. Rather practical to have different points of view. Note, however, that the definition will be limited to Full HD and the footage is quite shaky. Selfies are also very good, with a good management of backlight, a good level of detail, and almost no skin smoothing. This also applies to the videos captured from this sensor in 4K 60fps. At night, we note a loss of detail with the ultra-wide-angle lens, but the scene remains well exposed. The main module is doing quite well, with a good maintenance of the level of detail on the ground. The same goes for the 3x zoom, even if the noise starts to be felt, especially in the sky. However, I don't recommend zooming in any further, as the image will be drawn in the noise. By activating the night mode, you will gain a lot of details, especially with the ultra-wide lens, as well as a better exposure management. On the other hand, with this mode we are limited to a 10x zoom. Another example with the main module, we can see that the sky is still quite noisy, but otherwise the sensor offers an honest performance, with a rather natural color management and a well-maintained smoothing. The night mode reduces the noise that was present in the sky while illuminating the scene. We can also note that the interior of the boat is now perfectly exposed. This is probably the point that I appreciate the most with Samsung's night mode. In this extreme situation, and I promise you there are no screamers here, we cannot see anything, and the night mode still manages to recover some light. Night videos in 4K 30fps are mostly great. Of course, there is an increase in the noise level, but nothing very bothering. The smoothing is well controlled, with a good conservation of the level of detail, especially on the ground. The stabilization remains great, however, the footage is a little yellowish. I advise you to stay in 30fps, otherwise you may lose some details by switching to 60fps. Night selfies are decent, however we can see that the sky is quite noisy and that the reflection of the street light in the water is burned out. The night mode allows you to correct these two issues while making the shot brighter, especially by raising the level of detail on the scarf. Selfies in 4K 60fps suffers from an obvious lack of brightness and the noise level is really high. Switching to 30fps allows you to obtain a much brighter result, but you will have to get used to the high level of noise. The phone has a 4000 mAh battery, the same capacity as the S20, coupled with an adaptive refresh rate display, as well as a chip that should consume less in theory. We can expect a pretty decent battery life. This is the case here. The phone should last all day with a standard use by using apps like Twitter, WhatsApp or YouTube, with an average of 5 to 6 hours of screen on time. However, it is still quite easy to kill it during the day by launching some heavy games. Fortunately, the phone is compatible with fast charging, but not so fast since it takes about an hour to fully recharge it. But this charger block is simply not included in the box, and the cable provided may not be compatible with your current charger. Not a smart move, Samsung. So I can understand the frustration of some people saying that the box does not include a charger or even a headset. But despite this, I would say that this phone is still very interesting. It offers an elegant design, feels great in the end, have an excellent screen, very good performance and a very versatile camera. Only battery life could be a problem for those who plays a lot or edit the next Steven Spielberg movie on their phone. Besides that, the phone offers an excellent interface and will be guaranteed to have at least 3 years of major updates. Samsung was able to make some relevant concessions in order to lower the price of its phone, like the use of plastic or a flat screen. Only the lack of microSD card expansion really bothered me. Moreover, their devices are known to quickly drop in price, and we can now find this model at 700 euros, which is a really great deal. For the others, if the telephoto lens is not important for you, or if you simply don't like One UI, then the OnePlus 9 or the Xiaomi Mi 11 are great alternatives. But I would say that out of the three, the Galaxy S21 has the most complete package. So that was it for me. If you like the video, feel free to like it or even subscribe to my channel, and have a nice day.